Welcome everyone. My name is Jayant Kapatkar and I'm speaking live from Pune in India. I would like to welcome each one of you to this webinar. I hope you will enjoy the presentation. The topic for our discussion today is quantum physics, uh, connecting quantum physics with Vedanta. On the face of it, quantum physics looks and Vedanta look quite two different fields. Quantum physics in the realm of science, and Vedanta you may term in terms of philosophy or you may term it religion, but they team to quite different fields basically. But we'll show you today that how quantum physics and Vedanta are connected very intimately. If you are a student of quantum physics, some of the terms which are very used very often is an observing system and observed system. We'll be discussing these terms in detail, but observing system is what you're observing and observed is what you are observed. So one is observing means who's observing, and observed means what is being observed. And Vedanta, the equivalent term which is used often is observer or observed. The technical word could be Sakshi for observer and Prakriti for the observed, or you can call it subject or object. On the face of it, if you ask a lawyer, he'll say this looks exactly the same. It's like an open and shut case basically. But the issue is that quantum physics are using this terminology, but they have very limited understanding. The words are being used in a very narrow fashion basically. And these terms observer and observed, which is used in Vedanta, is a much broader perspective. And usually we will show you today that they include what the observing system and observed system as mentioned in quantum physics. If you understand the history of, I'll just give you an overview of history of physics. Physics can be divided into two different phases basically. One is the classical physics and the other one is the quantum physics. The classic physics started many decades before or centuries before, and you can say the heart or the main author of classical physics is Newton and his three laws of motion basically. With the three laws of motion, which are even relevant right now and every day we use that on a day-to-day basis. These motions, the laws of motion, allows everyone to track physics to track all the planets and everything around. They can track where the planets are going to be depending on the laws of motion, the forces, and those sort of things are known. And with that, physics thought the universe is like a giant machine basically, and everything is predictable. You can literally find out where would that star be in 100 years or 200 years because you know the motion, you know the forces, you know everything, and you can calculate sort of thing. So physics came to almost a stage when they thought they knew everything sort of thing. Then suddenly something turned quite dramatically in the beginning of 20th century when they started discovering some subatomic particles. And they found these subatomic particles to be very unpredictable. Sometimes they behave like wave and sometimes they behave like a particle sort of thing. And all the classical laws which were relevant for classical physics, they just did not apply to the subatomic particles as such. So a new type of science, a new type of physics started taking root basically. So what I'm going to do right now is to give you a quick overview of quantum physics. I'm not sure everyone is familiar with quantum physics, so I'll just not being very technical. I'll just try to give you a quick overview of some of the highlights and some of the important aspects of quantum physics. Quantum physics in 1805, there's a British scientist called Thomas Young. He conducted a double slit experiment in which he put a sheet of paper, or you want to call something, with two slits in it. And on the left-hand side of the slit, there was a light gun, which was emitting light. And on the right-hand side of the slits, those two slits, there was an optical screen, basically. So when light was being shown through these two slits, logically, you would expect two bands of light bands on the optical screen, because it can either go from the two slits, you can the top slit or the bottom slit, and only you can have two bands. But to the surprise of Thomas Young, he found out there were multiple bands on the optical screen. And you can only get multiple bands if light is a wave. Like wave is going through these two slits, they split up and then they combine, and the crest and the peaks get combined and subtract each other, and they move forward. And when they hit the optical screen, you have multiple bands basically. Like if you go have a wave going through two slits, and you can see the slits breaking up, and when they break up and they combine, and the peaks and the troughs combine and subtract each other, you will almost get multiple bands coming on their optical screen. So they concluded that light was a wave, basically. Then in 1905, Einstein, with his famous photoelectric experiment, he conducted the experiment in 1905, and it's called the photoelectric experiment, where he shone light on a photoelectric material, and this light would hit the photoelectrical material, and the reflected items which are coming out, they obviously thought should logically be a wave, but to their surprise, they found the light which is being emitted out from the photoelectrical material was packets of energy. They were particles, basically. And this experiment, which was done by Einstein in 1905, and surprisingly, he won the Nobel Prize in 1921 for this experiment. Although he's much more famous for his two theories of relativity, the theory of special relativity and the theory of general relativity. So they concluded that light was a particle. So you saw that light was a wave, as demonstrated by Thomas Young, and with the experiment of the photoelectric experiment, Einstein demonstrated that light was a particle, basically. So the confusion started. And then to add to this confusion, de Broglie, a French scientist, in 1923 made a very bold assertion that all matter in this universe has both wave and particle, properties, basically. When he says matter means all the matter. It could be subatomic particles like light, electrons, even everything, right? From the earth, the car, the train, any object you can see in the universe has a wave property and a particle property, basically. That means you, as a person, also has a wave property and a particle property. I have a wave property and a particle property. Anything, all these things surrounding in your room, obviously those are particles at the moment, but they also have a wave property then. And this was proven experimentally in 1927, and de Broglie got his Nobel Prize in 1929. He's the only scientist to get a Nobel Prize on the basis of his doctoral thesis. It was not really it was his doctoral thesis, and he got a Nobel Prize based on his doctoral thesis. And he's the only scientist to get a Nobel Prize basing on his doctoral thesis as such. So you can notice that science has always been focusing on the particle aspect only. There's very little focus on the wave part of the particle wave duality, basically. So that's where the limitation of science comes, because they don't talk about the wave part at all. But everyone agrees, and as per the de Broglie's thesis, that every matter in the universe has a particle property and a wave property. So there are many unanswered questions which come up when you talk about wave and particle. When is it a wave and when it is a particle? Can the wave and particle be existing at the same time, or they have to be, you can be either one of them? And lastly, where is the wave residing? So I try to answer some of these questions in our presentation today. But you can see that wave and particle does create a lot of confusion. When I say you have a wave property, as a person, you have a particle property. Particle property, there's no dispute about. We can straight away see the particle part. But where is the wave part? There's a lot of unanswered questions. Science has really not focused on the wave part a bit too much. Then you have the Schrodinger's wave equation. This is the heart of, just like Newton was the heart of classical physics, Schrodinger's wave equation, you can say, is the heart of quantum physics as such, basically. And based on his quantum wave equation, Schrodinger's wave equation, a physical system can be divided into two parts. It consists of two parts. One is the observed system and one is the observing system. And this system has two different variables as such. Energy and time are the two variables of this Schrodinger's wave equation. And you can see on the right-hand side, I've just shown you the type of wave equation is very complicated. We're not going to go into those discussions. Just to mention that there's a wave equation for everything and anything in this universe as such. The observed system is what the wave part is said. So the observed system is what is being observed, And what is really being observed is the wave part of the particle wave duality through the Schrodinger's wave equation. Each object has its own unique energy profile. So they have a energy profile. Every object in the universe, you look around you, all the objects around you have a unique energy profile. And they use the Schrodinger's wave equation to estimate that wave equation as such. It's much easier to estimate the wave equation for smaller particles like electrons and photons and the smaller particles because it's much easier to understand the energy profile. For the bigger particles, there's no what you call understanding too much, but there is definitely a Schrodinger's wave equation for every particle in the universe as such. And this wave function is a cumulative wave function of an object basically. So what I mean by cumulative means like every moment of the energy profile is there. Like for example, the sun now. The sun is about 4.5 billion light years old now. So since its birth to now, every moment of the sun has its own unique profile because the profile keeps changing because every time the sun keeps changing it keeps changing because everything is changing in the universe. So every moment of the sun, right from his birth to right now, has its own energy profile, and when you combine them together, you get a grand function of the sun, which is cumulative over time, right from his birth date to right now. Even for you, if you whatever your age is, right from your birth, so there's a unique energy profile for every moment of your life, and the cumulative profile, which will be time based, would be available for every object there. And when you combine these objects together, because you never see an object by itself, if you look outside your window, you will see such a complex scene with so many different objects. So all these objects combined together to form a grand wave function of the objects you are seeing there. So that's what the object observed system is there. The other important thing about the observed system based on the Schrodinger equation, that it must be a standing wave. That's a very important criteria for the Schrodinger's wave equation. Basically, there are two types of waves. One is a traveling wave and one is a standing wave. When you throw a stone on a pond and you can see the waves moving across through the pond, that would be a traveling wave because it keeps traveling till it dissipates energy, and that's it basically. But the standing wave has two walls and they keep bumping against the two walls, and they keep moving up and down. So what the Schrodinger's wave equation says, that the wave function cannot be a traveling wave function. It must be a standing wave function. And if it is a standing wave function, it must have two walls on which the wave can oscillate in between the two walls as such. Just to make it a little bit complicated, which I don't want to, but the Schrodinger's wave equation, when you square the Schrodinger's wave equation, they say, I really don't understand myself directly, but they say it becomes a probability wave function. And when you have a probability wave function, it means all the probabilities are available in that wave function as such. So all the possibilities are available in that wave function. To explain that thing, Schrodinger came up with his famous Schrodinger cat experiment there. In the Schrodinger, it was just an experiment, thought experiment. It was never tried physically. So you put a cat in a box, enclosed box. Then there's no windows, nothing, enclosed box. In that box, there's a veil of poison there, and that poison is enclosed there in a flask or whatever you want to call it. And there's an automatic trigger, and the automatic trigger is very random. It can trigger yes, no. It depends on it is very random, and it can knock the veil of the flask of poison, and the poison can come out. And with that, the cat could die. So since the box is enclosed, the observer outside doesn't know is the cat alive or dead. So in the Schrodinger's wave equation, according to what Schrodinger explains, that all the possibilities are available in that wave function. The cat is alive, the cat is dead, the cat is half alive, half dead, 1/3 alive, 2/3 dead. Also, all the different combinations you can think of is available in that wave function. So that's what they say the probability wave function means. All the different possibilities are available in that wave function. And that is what the observed system is. That is a full wave there, and the full observed system of the cat and all the whale and everything is the full observed the wave function. And you don't, it has all the different possibilities there. The cat could be dead, cat could be alive, all the different possibilities are there. So that's what is, so you can see the observed system is mostly the wave function which you see basically. So now, the observing system now. Observing system is what is the other part of the physical system, which is looking at the observed system there. So the observing system is usually a measuring device. So what the Schrodinger wave system works is when the observer system interacts with the observed system, the wave function collapses, and all the different possibilities which are there in that wave function, only one possibility takes hold, and all the other possibilities become zero as such. So in the case of the Schrodinger's cat experiment, once the observer opens the trapdoor and looks inside, if he sees the cat is alive, then all the other possibilities which are there, cat being dead, cat being half alive, half dead, all the possibilities which are there, they'll all become zero. And then the only one possibility takes hold when the observer system interacts with the observed system. So that's what the observing system is, like a measuring device which interacts with the observed system. And when it interacts, all the possibilities are there become zero. Only one of the possibilities takes hold, and that's what you see basically. So you can see very important conclusions you can make from here. One is that if there was no observing system, what would you have? You would have the observed system, which is made of waves basically. So the wave comes first, and then the particle comes. So you can see the sequence, what is happening. You have a wave function, and then you have an observing system. When the observing system interacts with the wave system, one of the possibilities takes hold basically. So that has a tremendous implication, which we will be discussing in this presentation. Just to explain this again in a different double slit experiment, I would strongly recommend that once you finish this presentation, if you can have some time, if you can go to YouTube and just type in double slit experiment, and there are some very nice videos which explains this double slit experiment in a very nice manner. And it's really an amazing and a very what should I say? It's very difficult to sometimes to understand sort of thing why it happens. We saw earlier Thomas Young, he did this experiment of a light passing through two slits, and he had an optical screen, and he found out the light was a wave on the other side. Now, later on, this was done much later. People thought they can be smart. They said, let's see what happens. We put a measuring device focused on one of the slits to see what is going through the slit. Is it a light wave is going through, or a particle is going through that wave basically? And surprising, when they put that measuring device, instead of that multiple band, they found out there only two bands came up on the optical screen. So then suddenly you know that light is a particle there. So you can see that the measuring device turned the electrons to become a particle basically. So how did the electrons know that there's a measuring device now, so let me become a particle now, sort of thing? This is a very profound and very amazing experiment it is, how and why the measuring device. But what I'm trying to conclude here, in the presence of the measuring device, the wave function collapses and becomes a particle, sort of thing. So when there was no measuring, and in the same experiment they've done, they remove the measuring device, and when they remove the measuring device, then again they have multiple bands coming on the optical screen. And the moment they put the measuring device, they have two bands coming there, which is like a particle going through either one of those two bands. So you can see that when you add a measuring device, the wave-like properties become particle. And also the measuring device what the measuring device is the observing system based on the Schrodinger's wave equation as such. So there are many unanswered questions which science has not tackled, and they have really little limited answers to those questions on the Schrodinger's wave equation or that particle wave duality. One is standing waves. Where is the wall for the wave? You may say that the electrons will have the wall within the atom basically. And then you might say the atoms, where are the walls for the atom then? You might say the walls for the atom is within a molecule. And then you might say, where are the wall for the molecule there? You might say it might be in a more complex molecules which are interacting together. Then you might say, where is the wall for that complicated complex molecule structure basically? Then you might say it may be in the object of that which the molecules are forming. Then you might say, where is the wall for that objects basically? Then you can keep going on, and then you might say, finally, it's the universe which has a wave. Where is the wall for the universe, for the walls of the, what you call the wave function to, because I just mentioned to you, the standing wave requires a wall between which they can bang against each other and oscillate sort of thing. So there's no wall as such. So there's no understanding where is the wall for the standing wave. So that's a very big unanswered question in Schrodinger's wave function as such. The other one is that wherever there's a wave, there must be an ether basically on which the wave can travel sort of thing. Without an ether, you cannot travel. Like for example, the sound, has the air to travel sort of thing. So there must be for this wave function which Schrodinger is talking about, there must be an ether. So science was very sure they will discover that ether in space outside. But they have tried and tried. They have come to the conclusion there is no ether in space at all. So the question is, how is the wave propagating in a medium where there is no ether at all? So that's again a big unanswered question of the Schrodinger's wave function, because they believe the waves are out there, but there is no medium for the wave to join in sort of thing. The third question to answer is, what is the waves made of sort of thing? So what is the wave made of or such thing? Obviously, they must be made of something, because you can't say waves are made of nothing. The wave must be made of something. What is the wave made of? And there's no answer to that question also. The next question is, where do the wave reside? It definitely doesn't reside in the particle, because we just shown the wave becomes a particle. So wave become first and then the particle. So you can't have a wave residing within the particle itself. Sorry. Just excuse me one question. I just a question. Kazala. Okay, I'll admit you. Come, I'll see you. I'll admit you. Okay, I'll admit you. So you log in again. I'll admit you. Sorry, there was a small glitch. So the question is, where do the wave reside? And it definitely doesn't reside in the particle as such. And the last thing is, can matter? 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Let me just. Just give me 1 minute. Sorry about that. Okay. Can the matter collapse the wave? So the measuring device, we saw the device which is looking at the slits. Can that device collapse a wave? What is in that matter which gives that power? Like for a camera, for example, which is looking at the two slits, and then the electron knows it's a particle. What is that power in that measuring device which gives it to the power for it to give it to so that it becomes a wave sort of thing? So these are some of the unanswered questions we will try to answer later on there. So we want to give a very different perspective, a Vedanta perspective to this question. We just seen right now, we saw the observing system and observed system based on the understanding of quantum physics there. Now we'll try to answer these two questions from the perspective of Vedanta now. To understand the observing and observer and observed based on Vedanta, we must understand a little bit about the mind basically. What is the mind? Mind is nothing but a bundle of experiences sort of thing. Everything in the mind, the experience you have in your mind is whatever the experience you have, that is called the mind basically. And we have experiences in our mind all day basically, right from the moment you get up until you go to sleep. In fact, even the dream state, you have a lot of experiences going through in your mind. And all that is experiences you have. So you have continuous series of experiences right from the morning. Sometimes it is visual, sometimes it is sound, sometimes it's touch, sometimes it's taste, sometimes all sorts of different five senses you have, and they give you all a bundle of experiences, and that is all happening in the mind there. Now, if you decode an experience must have two ingredients basically. It must have an awareness and the forms of objects there. So whenever you have an experience, you are definitely aware of the experience there. So you cannot say I had an experience in the morning and I was not aware of it. All the experiences which you are having in your mind, you are aware of it basically. And that awareness is a very important ingredient of an experience as such. And also the forms come from the five different senses and they superimpose on the awareness to complete the experience there. So the experience, the forms are coming from outside, from your five senses, but the awareness is already present in your mind. It's already an ingredient in your mind. We're not going to go into detail how it comes into the mind, but the awareness is already present in your mind. And if the form is superimposed on that awareness, you get an experience there. So awareness is already present in the mind, and we have discussed in other webinars, but I'll just briefly mention again. Awareness is made of three different ingredients. Just like water is made of two molecules of hydrogen and one molecule of oxygen to give you H2O. In the same way, awareness also has three different ingredients. It must have an observer, it must have an observed, which is like an object, and must have intelligence there. So the observer is the subject which sees what is happening, because without an observer, you will not have awareness there. If there are no observed objects from the coming there, you will not have experience at all. You will not have awareness. And if there's no intelligence, if there are subjects, there are objects there, but there is nothing, there's no intelligence which is connecting this together, you will not have awareness. So awareness is something which is present in your mind. It already has an inbuilt observer. It has the capacity to become any object, and it has the intelligence there. So right now, if you are aware of me talking to you, and if you are aware of the iPad or your mobile device in front of you, you will be listening to my talk. So there's a listener within you which is listening to my talk. There are my words which are coming out, which is the observed, which is coming through. So all that is part of awareness as such. So let's try to understand the observed part from a Vedanta perspective there. So I just mentioned to you that mind is where the my objects, vrittis are coming. So from the five senses, you have the objects coming into the mind. And those objects, based on what Vedanta teaches, they are called vrittis. Vrittis are mental waves which are available in the mind, which represent different objects basically. And the vrittis are coming from five different senses. Vritti is a technical word, it's a Sanskrit word which means a whirlpool. You can imagine the whirlpool of activity which takes place in your mind, all the waves which are there in your mind of different objects, different all sorts of things basically. And this vritti are made of intelligence because they are submerged in awareness which is available in the mind. And I mentioned to you, awareness has intelligence basically. So these vrittis are made of intelligence there. Because they have vrittis of objects, because you have so many different objects coming there. If you see a scene outside your window, like I mentioned, there are millions of objects out there. They all come into the mind, and each object has its own different vritti. And since they're made of intelligence, they know what they are basically. So it doesn't get confused that when your two objects are combined together, it doesn't lose its identity. It understands what it is. So it may have one wave function for all the objects, but all the inside wave functions within them have their own intelligence basically. So that way, there has a cosmic wave function which combines all the different wave functions, but a subset of that cosmic wave function is present in the individual mind. So the individual mind only has a subset of all the cosmic wave functions basically. So now that we understood the observed part of it, the observed part is what we just to conclude is that this the wave function, waves which are present in the mind, which are representing different objects. All the different objects which are in the universe, they must have a wave function in the mind, and they are in the form of vrittis, what Vedanta calls them basically, and they're basically a mental wave, a wave function, and they're made of intelligence. Now, observer now. Who's the observer now? When we see the tree, let's answer simple questions. When we see the tree, who's seeing the tree? When we listen to music, who's listening to the music there? When we taste the chocolate, sweetness of a chocolate, who's the tasting the chocolate? So there's an observer within you which is seeing the tree, which is listening to the music, and which is tasting the chocolate. So it becomes, the observer becomes a seer, it becomes a listener of music, it becomes a taster of chocolates, and all the different function you have. If you have reading a book, it becomes a reader of the book. If you are talking, you become the talker. If you are trying to walker, all sorts of different functions the subject, the observer plays basically. And the observer is part of and parcel of awareness as such. Within awareness, there's an observer, which suddenly becomes, the same observer becomes a seer. Sometimes when it's listening to becomes a listener. When it's tasting chocolate, it becomes a taster of chocolate basically. So it plays different roles basically. So let's understand the observer and wave. This is a very important thing to understand, that when you look at a tree outside the window, you are sure you are looking at the tree because it's a particle there. But now if you turn your back to the tree, what happens there? You don't see the tree anymore. So what format is the tree in? Obviously, it cannot be a particle because you don't see it there. And it could be a wave, and it is a wave basically. Like, for example, if you are sitting in a room with a few friends of yours, and you walk out of the room and you don't see them, are your friends, what form are they? Are they in your wave form or are they particle form? And obviously you don't see them, since they're not being observed by you, you cannot be sure. And what Vedanta teaches is they are in the wave form at that stage basically. And since you're not in the room, and you might yell out to your friends and say, are you a wave or a particle? And then your friends will look surprised, and they'll also say they don't see you because you're in the other room. And then again, you are a wave for them there. So what is very important is that the observer is needed to see a particle, and that observer collapses the wave to become a particle. So when you suddenly turn 180 degrees and start looking at the tree again, and that suddenly becomes a particle basically. So the observer is the minimum requirement which is needed for a wave to collapse into a particle there. So the observer is a must to collapse a wave. So you can see is exactly what Vedanta, what quantum physics is showing. We just showed earlier that when the observed, the measuring device interacts with the wave collapses to become a particle here. Here, Vedanta is teaching us that when the observer within you interacts with the wave function which is available in your mind, that wave function collapses and it is projected out as a particle outside basically. So it's very important to again understand the wave part comes first. That's a very important thing to understand. The wave part comes first, and this wave collapses in the presence of the observer to become a particle as such. So the observer is required for a wave to collapse to become a particle there. And in some ways you can see the connection between quantum physics and Vedanta. They're very similar sort of thing, because in quantum physics also they mentioned the measuring device, when it interacts with the observed with the wave function, it collapses to take up one of the possibilities based on the Schrodinger's wave equation. Here Vedanta is teaching you that the observer within you, which is in your mind, and the wave function also is in the waves, the vrittis in your mind, when they come in the presence of the observer, it collapses and it is comes out as a particle outside. So the wave comes first, the particle comes second. With this basic understanding and connection between quantum physics and Vedanta, let's try to answer this question which we had raised earlier basically. We had mentioned that the standing wave, where is the wall of the wave? And we saw earlier, there is no wall for the wave. Like we mentioned earlier, that the particles or the electrons can be within the molecule, atom, the atom within the molecule, and we went on. Where is the wave function? Walls for the cosmic wave basically. But here The wave is, if you assume it's in the mind, and the mind there are fencing, and the wave oscillates between the mind as such. So mind is the only place for standing waves. There is no standing waves possible in space there because there is no wall for it to oscillate. But mind is a place where you can have standing waves. So mind is the only place where you can have standing waves. Propagation medium. We just saw there is no ether in space there. But the mind has awareness inbuilt in it. It's already there. And this wave function, which is coming for the fine senses, they propagate within the awareness, they interact with the awareness, and this becomes the propagation medium. So the propagation medium for the waves in the mind is awareness. And the awareness is what is available in the mind. We just shown that all the experiences has two ingredients. It has a wave, it has, the awareness plus the form of objects basically. So the awareness is already present in the mind. And when the forms come and superimposed on the forms, the waves of the form superimposes on this awareness, you get an experience as such. So there's a propagation medium which answers that unanswered question if the waves are in the mind. What are waves made of? The answer is simple answer is made of intelligence. We mentioned that the awareness is available in the mind and intelligence is part of awareness. So the waves in the mind are made of intelligence. So they have the property inbuilt, the software, you can put it coding, whatever the way you want to put it to understand it. But the waves in the mind are self-intelligent, basically. They know what they are, and they are interacting with other waves, knowing each other what they are, and when they combine, they have a full understanding, basically. So the waves are made of intelligence as such. It's not an easy concept to grasp, but just have to imagine these waves which are in the mind because they're in the presence of awareness, and awareness is full of intelligence, unlimited intelligence. So this wave gather that intelligence, form this awareness as such. So the waves of, they call the vrittis, are made of intelligence. Where do this waves reside? This is a very big unanswered question in science. We are just seeing that many times I've shown you that the wave comes first, then the particle. So the waves cannot reside in a particle. They cannot reside out there because they're only outside is particles, basically. There's nothing in the universe out there. They're only particles. The only logical place where the waves can reside is in the mind itself only. So the mind is a location where you have waves, and that are the waves which quantum physics also are talking about, are the waves of the mind. And the other question which you raised was, can matter collapse the wave? What is the power? We saw in the measuring device? We saw the measuring device able to collapse the light to become a particle there. What is the power in that measuring device which will allow that wave to collapse to become a particle there? If you look at the measuring device, that measuring device also has a duality. It has a wave property and a particle property. So it's nothing unique about it. It has a wave property. Then you might say the human eyes is what is collapsing the wave, but the human mind, human eyes also has a wave property and a particle property. Then you might say the brain is collapsing the electrons in that double slit experiment. But your brain also has a wave property and a particle property. So the only place which is available for the wave to collapse is the observer within you. The observer in you is the only place where the wave can collapse, basically. Nothing else in the no matter has the power to collapse a wave. Only power which is available is the observer, which is part of awareness. It has the power to collapse the wave, basically. So you can see very interesting conclusion you can reach, that difference between classical and quantum physics. They're finding that none of the laws of quantum physics apply to classical, and none of the laws of classical apply to quantum physics because they're working in different realms, basically. Classical physics is all working in space outside there. You have space there, you have all the gross objects, and they're breaking those objects, they're finding atoms, they're finding subatomic particles, they're finding quarks, they're finding all sorts of things about this particle there. And the wave function, which is none of these laws of classical physics apply to quantum physics. It doesn't apply because it is a study of the waves in the mind itself. And so the quantum physics is really the study of the subtle universe, which is in the mind, and classical physics is a study of all the gross objects which you see outside in the world out there. So you can see that there is two different types of objects. One is a particle object and one is a wave object. The particle objects are hanging around in the universe out there, and the wave objects is within our mind. And exactly what this, quantum physics talks about, the wave part of it, they're talking about nothing else but the waves of vrittis which are in the mind itself. So the implication of this is that both science and Vedanta agree that matter exists a particle property and wave property. Science agrees with that, with the observed and observed. The particle wave duality, de Broglie mentioned that all the matter in the universe has a wave property and a particle property. And Vedanta has always been saying there is a subtle universe made of waves, and there is a subtle universe made of gross universe made of particles, basically. So both are in complete agreement that there is two forms of objects. One is the wave part and one is the particle part. We just concluded that the wave must come first and this wave must exist in the mind itself. This has tremendous implication. That means we are all projecting our universe. The wave is in the mind, and once the wave is what you call becomes particles as such. And there's a fully functioning universe in waveform in the mind. So everything happens. It's not easy to understand and grasp, but everything happens in the mind first, in the world of the waveform. And after that happens in the waveform, then only it is projected out in the universe there. Just to a subject aside, entanglement is one big topic these days, which is being discussed immensely in all around the world, because 3 people this year got the Nobel Prize for the entanglement. Entanglement is a concept where they have two particles, they send them across from entangled particles far apart. They could be half a universe apart. And if you change the polarity of one of them, the polarity of the other one changes automatically, instantaneously, even if they are half a universe apart. And according to Einstein theory, nothing can travel faster than light. How come these two particles which are entangled can communicate? The simple answer is they already have entangled in the mind itself first, and that mind particles are being emitted out. So the entanglement and the arrangement is already been done in the mind, and then they are sent out. And when you change the polarity, the one is and the other one is already a change, because this is what your mind has projected. The subtle universe has already projected out there, and the observer in the mind collapses the wave function to see the particle units out there. So science there are many different, I'm not going to go through this, so many different ways Vedanta can help science to understand how time is originating, the theory of everything, understanding emotion, makeup of object, dark matter, dark energy, entanglement, multiverses, how gravity really works. Many of these are bottleneck within science. But if you understand the concepts of Vedanta, you can apply them to them, and you will see they can resolve many of the stumbling blocks which are being faced by science. And just lastly, I just want to share a slide about my book, which I launched a few months back. This book has about 37 essays, and it has about 345 authors. And they're available all around the world through Amazon and Flipkart. And I'm quite happy to announce that this book is also available through all the major stores in Crossword in India as such. And in Crossword, they tested the book in 2 different markets, 2 different stores in Mumbai and Pune. They found the response to be pretty good. So then they took it all around the country. And the response in Crossword also is very good. In the first month itself, they sold more than 200 copies, which I think they said was quite very, very good. So it comes as a Kindle version. It comes as a Kindle Unlimited. It comes as paperback, and it comes as hardcover as such. So this is my contact, giant@staminteractive.com. And so if you have any questions, we'll go through the questions. Let me see. I think Maya is not. I think Yeah, yeah. I think Maya is not able to read the questions. I think she was. Let me see. Okay, Satish, D. Broggle, I think got the spelling wrong. Sorry, thank you for correcting me. Okay. Maya, can you see the questions or?
Yes, I can see them.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just had to step away for a
Okay,
minute.
fair enough. Okay, then you can.
Okay, the first was a comment from one of the participants saying the scientist's name is Louis de Broglie or Broglie. I don't know exactly how you pronounce it. Broglie and not Brogie. So I think going forward, Jayant, you need to get your presentation checked by me so that I can fix all the spellings for you.
Okay, agreed. Okay.
I'm just joking, but yeah. So Shitanshu Mishra has asked a question. Where does consciousness figure in your view? And a follow-on question. And then what is reality?
That consciousness which you're mentioning to you is exactly the same thing which I mentioned earlier, was the awareness. Consciousness and awareness can be used interchangeably, and a lot of people do that. So the awareness is exactly consciousness, but I like to use the word awareness because awareness is much more broader. When an object comes in contact with awareness, that object becomes conscious basically. So awareness is already present when the wave in the mind which I was mentioned to you, when they come in contact with the awareness, that object becomes conscious basically. So the reality is awareness is the underlying reality. Consciousness, the way I look at it, is a subset of awareness. So everything is awareness, but all consciousness is not awareness of the thing. So there's a difference between the two. Awareness is.
May I say something on this?
Yeah, please.
There is other.
Can you identify yourself, please?
I'm Shitanshu Mishra. Only my question was being answered.
Yeah.
Consciousness is considered to be equivalent to Brahman. And Brahman is all pervasive. Everything is part of Brahman, including the universe.
Yeah.
And that is the only reality as per our Vedanta.
Yes.
So awareness and consciousness are not exactly same. And as you said, in fact, in a reverse manner, that consciousness is subset of awareness. I would say it is different. Consciousness is all pervasive. Awareness is to the individual. What you are aware of, I may not be aware of. In my mind, I may be aware of different things. You may be aware of different things. But consciousness is all around. Everyone. Consciousness is the actual real thing, what we call Brahman.
Yes.
Brahma Satya, Jagat Mithya.
Yes.
So when we say that everything happens in our mind, we are talking of basically Maya.
Yeah.
So Maya is a myth, and Brahman is the Satya, reality.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not denying what you're saying at all. What you're saying is just a question of how you understand the issue. Your understanding is exactly what I'm understanding. I'm understanding that thing by awareness. You're understanding that by consciousness. It's correct. What you're saying is absolutely right. I'm going to dispute it at all. With your consciousness definition, it is definitely correct. But I find it a little bit more easier to understand awareness because consciousness is used by medical doctors and all sorts of things come in and they say consciousness.
No, that is different.
Yeah, so
that consciousness, subconsciousness, and unconsciousness, they are on kind of medical terms.
Yeah. So,
but in let me say a little more about it.
Yeah.
We have got a group of IITians.
Yeah.
WhatsApp group where we discuss all these things.
Okay.
And in fact, we have a special group within that.
Yeah.
Where we are working on quantum consciousness.
Yes.
And I wonder if you know Dr. Basant Parida. He was from IIT Kharagpur,
Yeah.
and he was the actually initiator of this thing. Unfortunately, he died last year, and he stayed in USA also for very long.
Okay. Okay.
So, in case you are interested, I may add you to that group also. You will get a lot of other views from different people.
Definitely. I would definitely like to attend. And is it part of the same thing like Satish Sharma, no, Verma from IIT Bombay? He also formed a group called Vedanta Wisdom, it's called.
No, it is different.
Or is it different? Okay.
Our group is basically IITians, global IITians
Okay. Okay.
for quantum consciousness, like
Yes,
that.
I would like to join because I'm also from IIT Kanpur. So I definitely would like to join. And I'll send you, what you're saying is I have no dispute with that at all. It's just a question. I've understood awareness to be a better word to use. So that's why I use it. But it can be interchangeably used. Consciousness and awareness are exactly the same term. What you are defining a consciousness is exactly what I'm defining awareness as such.
So, sir, you have my email address.
Yes.
And if you can send me your contact number.
Yes, I will do that. Definitely.
I will request the group admin to add you there.
Definitely.
And probably you will find there is one Dr. Jaipal Dudeja.
Okay.
I wonder if you know him. He has
No.
also published number of books.
Okay.
On consciousness and quantum consciousness. He is also from IIT Delhi.
Okay.
And if you go to Amazon and just ask for Jai Paul Dudeja.
Okay, Jadeja.
Okay. He has published, I think, about 10-15 books.
Okay, I would
on related subjects.
So where are you based? Are you based in US or India?
I'm in Lucknow.
Okay, perfect. Good. Nice talking to you. And I will send you my details and let's keep in touch basically.
That will be very nice of you. And probably we both will benefit with that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Sitanju.
Welcome, sir.
Yeah.
And then the next question is from Mahesh Balsekar, and he's asking, what is the Vedanta equivalent of quantum entanglement in quantum physics?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I think entanglement, like I was mentioning to you earlier, it's a big subject at the moment. Maybe I should do a talk on entanglement one of these days. But the way physics is understanding entanglement is not understand, they are totally confused because you have two particles which are entangled, which move across at two different parts of the universe. And if you change the polarity of one of them, the polarity of the other one changes instantaneously. And that's what, and how do they change instantaneously? What is the communication between those two particles, which may be half a universe apart? And what science is totally confused about it. But like I mentioned earlier, that everything happens in the mind first. The cosmic mind, everything happens first in the waveform, basically. And then the waveforms which are entangled. So the entanglement is already
talking about.
Beg your pardon?
Sorry.
No, is that Mahesh, you asking the question or any comment you have? Is that no? It's okay. Sorry. Okay. So the entangled particles is the entanglement is already taken place in the mind, and that the changing of polarity and everything is already taken place in the mind, and then that is emitted out in two different parts. So when you see the polarity of one is changed, the other one is already changed because it already has happened in the mind, because that's what is projecting out there. So that's what, because the wave part comes first. The wave part is not explored very much by science. And if they want to understand the concept of entanglement, they must understand the wave part. And just to take a step forward, the entanglement which takes in the mind, there are siddhis, like you talk about in the Hindu literatures, Yoga Sutra, they talk about siddhis in a big way. When the mind is entangled with an object, your ego or whatever you want to call it, the waveform is because the mind also has waveforms. When they entangle with each other, you can manipulate the waveform basically. Obviously, that requires a lot of power, and some people have that inbuilt power. That's why you heard lots of weird stories of what you call people able to change things, do things. because sometimes they may not be aware, but this power are there. So entanglement is a concept which takes place in the mind itself first. Your ego, it could be just two objects when they entangle, when they send apart, they're projected outside. The entanglement is already done basically. So that's an area which is very new, and entanglement is a new concept, and science is not able to understand. They will find a solution only when they accept that everything happens in the mind first. All the entanglement is already taken place in the mind, and then it is projected out. If they understand that concept, the solution to entanglement is obvious then, basically, because the entanglement is already taken in the mind. Does that answer your question, Mahesh? Okay, he's not there maybe. You can go to the next question.
Okay. The next question is from Mr. M.V. Joga Rao, and he asks, is there a possibility of clash or overlap of different waves in the mind?
There is a clash, but like I mentioned, these waves are made of intelligence, so they know how to keep track of their own self, basically, because the wave function is there's no separate wave for different objects. Basically, they all get mixed up into major complex wave functions, and since they're made of intelligence, the coding is available for each object, which is independent sort of thing, unless they're entangled. If they get entangled, then they form as one wave function. Otherwise, they may be forming one wave function, but they keep the independence sort of thing. So the question of clashing is not there, because the wave functions are made of intelligence, and that's how the waves are made in our mind, sort of thing. Does that answer your question, Mr. Jagara? No, I don't think he's there also. I can go to the next question.
The next question is from Mr. Satish Tatte. He says, what new insights can Vedanta bring to quantum physics that those physicists can experimentally verify and then accept? Without experiments, they will not accept.
That is correct, but they have to understand your inner core, basically. That obviously you can't experiment anything with the inner core, but if they use logic, the inner core comes into your picture, because, like I mentioned, the wave part has to be in the mind. So the wave part, which is quantum physics is talking about, is available in the mind itself. So obviously you can't experiment that waveform in the mind. So for science, it's difficult to really, they have to take a plunge into the aspect of the inner core, understanding the observer, because the observer is the key to all the objects outside. Unless they don't understand the observer, they will never understand the objects out there. So it's science. I understand science believes in experiments, but I don't know how else to prove it experimentally, what I'm saying out here. But maybe some scientists will come up with some experiments. But till that happens, science has a lot of stumbling blocks. They can only overcome the stumbling blocks if they accept the inner core, the powers which are within the inner core, the power of awareness which is within you. So all that has to be accepted by science. That only can be done through logic and reasoning, basically. And once they accept that, then things will become much easier for science.
Okay, the next question is from Haripriya. If waves are made of intelligence, the observer must be having knowledge of the wave. If the observer has knowledge of the wave, he must be responsible for its creation. Then the observer must be responsible for the particles. If that is so, he must be the doer of all the thoughts and actions done through the five senses. I can understand from what is presented here that all the thoughts and actions in this universe are being done by only one observer, which is awareness. Am I right?
Let me read it again. If the waves are made
so
of
she has put the one observer in capitals, and the actions are being done in this universe in capitals, and the doer, if that is so, he must be the doer of all thoughts and actions. That doer is also in capitals. So basically, obviously she's referring to, I think, some Brahman kind of thing.
So there are two types of observers, and you would say that one is the ego observer, and one is the what you call the observer, which is part of awareness as such. Basically, there are people may confuse between the two, but ego is really not an observer as such, because all the observing is done by the observer itself, the main observer. Ego is just latches on to saying I'm the observer sort of thing. But the other thing, important thing to understand is that the object creation is that the waves which are coming out from the mind, from the five senses, when they interact with the awareness, this wave manipulates the awareness to become that object there. So the waves, it's not like a Play-Doh. Now, if you have a Play-Doh, when you manipulate the Play-Doh to become a tree or a car, the Play-Doh is by itself is Play-Doh sort of thing, but it's been manipulated to become a car as such. The same way, the waves which are coming into the mind, they manipulate the what you call the awareness to become that object there. And I know it's a very complicated, long question. I have written an article on understanding the mind. It's available on my website. So there it gives you a step by step what really happens in the mind as such. Because the waves, they interact with the power. Of course, you got the many powers there inside. Let me just see. Can you just clarify your question by Haripriya? Are you there, Haripriya? Priya, are you there, Haripriya?
Yes, I'm here.
If you just want to
I
explain that
just
thing,
wanted to know.
thing.
Yeah, in Vedanta, we understand, we know that all our scriptures say that there is only one observer because ego is not considered to be existing. We see it, but we don't. I mean, Vedanta doesn't accept it, right? Ego is not different from the Brahman. Both are same. It is just abstract. Ego is just an abstract. So observer must be only Brahman.
Yeah.
So if there is only one Brahman in all the minds, seeing at all the objects, so he must be the doer of all the intelligence that is behind those thoughts and the actions that follow those thoughts. So the doer is the only observer and not each and every individual. Which are I mean, individuals are not actually existing. They are just abstract. They are just the observers observing. That's all, right?
Yeah, actually, if you really go deeper into it, there are two different worlds of universes existing. One is the universe of forms, and one is the universe of awareness sort of thing. So all of us are living in the universe of forms. Once you're living in the universe of forms, when in that time there is an ego which is active, and that ego is gets the power from the main observer, so it becomes the observer because it can see the forms and everything there. But if you are in the world of the awareness, then there is only one observer. That one observer becomes multiple egos. It's like they say, like a bucket. If you have buckets of water, and if you put sunshine, one sun becomes multiple suns in each bucket, basically.
In each reflection.
Reflection. Yeah. In the same way, one observer, which is the big observer, is a capital O, they are reflected in each mind or each awareness, what you call ignorance. And when that get reflected, they become all the small observers are there, basically. So it is very confusing because there are multiple, each one is an observer if they live in the world of forms. But a self-realized person, he doesn't live in the world of forms. He lives in the world of awareness, basically. For him, there's only one awareness sort of thing. But for us who are trying to reach the second stage of being reaching the world of observer of the awareness, for us it is we have multiple observers, and each observer is seeing different objects. Basically, we are living the world of ignorance sort of thing. That full world is made of ignorance. So it is confusing because sometimes Vedanta in the scriptures, they use it in very interchangeable ways. So you sometimes don't know what they're referring to. But the best way to understand is that there's a world of forms where all the ignorant people are staying, and there's a world of awareness where all the self-realized people are staying. And I think I consider myself to be living in the world of ignorance. So you see an observer basically there, which is the reflected version of the main observer, like the buckets I showed you. So you have a reflected, when you have ignorance and when you have an observer, when it reflects on the ignorance, to get a reflected observer, and the reflected observer becomes the ego sort of thing. Does that answer your question anyway? Or it's still confusing? It is confusing. It's a confusing subject.
No, it's not confusing. It's not confusing to me. I am very much clear that there is only one observer.
Yes.
And the observer is doing everything, because as you said, in the waveform, everything exists in waveform. So there can be only one energy that can exist in different group of thoughts in each of the individuals, right?
There's one energy which is available in the observer, the big observer, the awareness part of it, which I mentioned. Awareness has unlimited, infinite energy, and that energy is used in different minds, a subset of it.
So if there is only one Brahman,
Yes.
and there is nothing else, that is what Vedanta says, right? There
Yes,
is only
correct.
one Brahman, nothing else exists, in fact.
If there's no ignorance.
So if that is the case,
but you have to also specify there'll be one Brahman if there is only no ignorance. If there is ignorance, then there will be multiple egos. So for one Brahman to exist, you got to remove all ignorance. If there's no ignorance, then only what is left is Brahman. But if there is ignorance,
then ignorance is also a form of Brahman only. Ignorance is also coming from Brahman only, right?
No, Brahman ignorance is superimposed.
Is part of Brahman, or I can say that ignorance is also part of Brahman. Is it?
Everything is a Brahman. There's no denying to that. It becomes very. That's why they say there's no. Sometimes to explain some concepts, there are no words for it, sort of, because there is only one Brahman. That's I agreed, but there is ignorance also. Unless your ignorance is not removed, ignorance is there, and the universe, objects, everything is created by this ignorance. Like if you see the world outside, you don't see Brahman there. You see objects there. Why are you seeing objects? Because that objects is made of ignorance, and that ignorance is covering awareness as such, basically. But if you look at the objects in terms of I'm aware of this object, then you see awareness there, basically. There are only two things in the universe. One is awareness and one is ignorance, basically. And all the different objects are made of ignorance only. And ignorance is a method of covering Brahman. And we live in the world of ignorance, basically. We live in the world of ego, all sorts of things, form. And but there's only Brahman. Because of ignorance, we don't know sort of thing. It is...
yeah.
In Vedanta, it is Atma and Anatma.
Yeah. Okay. Atma is knowledge, Atma is ignorance, basically. No? So there are only two things in the mind. Also, if you see, I just mentioned earlier, there's for the experiences you have awareness plus the forms, and the forms are made of ignorance only. So the mind only has knowledge and ignorance, basically. Yeah.
I just wanted to interrupt here. It's actually 7:45. And there are several other questions. So I think it would be a good idea if those whose questions have been unanswered can send Jayant an email directly.
No, we'll go through them quickly. We'll go through them.
You want to go through them? Okay.
Let's because if the people are waiting, I'll do that.
So if I have...
Yeah, it seems to be a lot of questions are there. But you can always contact me anytime if I'm not able to answer all the questions properly. And I'll, if you don't have time.
I mean, this is more like a dialogue, it's not exactly a individual questions that you can can be taken up. It's like everyone is giving their comments on the questions already asked. It's that type of thing.
Okay.
So...
If we are wrapping up, can I just thank Jayanji on behalf of the entire audience?
Yeah.
And we'll stay connected. And I have some questions and I had some answers for Haripriya ji to answer her question. But we can take that up next time. So thank you very much, sir.
Yes. Or you can send emails. That's not a problem. You can send emails.
We'll do, ma'am. We'll do, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So anyone else has any comments, or should we just
yeah, if someone else wants to take up their question in person, please go ahead.
Actually, I'll tell you what I'll do is the chats are recorded, so I'll have the questions, and if there's any specific questions that someone is asked, then I
So,
can
so
contact.
if I can have for 1 second to
Yeah.
interject on
May I know
Haripriya.
your name? May I know your name?
I'm Abhinav Agarwal.
Okay, Abhinav, yeah.
Yeah, I'm in United States. That's why you see sun outside the window.
Okay.
Ah,
So, madam, your question is very valid. So intelligence and ignorance are like or perceptions of looking at
or
something,
perception looking at
of
something.
even as a thought process, what is a thought? Thought is a vibration, the thought vibration can be interpreted. Somebody's positive thought can be interpreted, differently. For example, a cat that I have in my house is looking at mouse as an object outside as food, and I'm interpreting as violence, right? So I'm trying to make my cat vegetarian, but American cats are, not so easy to turn to vegetarians. So it is all an interpretation of how we perceive as something. So super consciousness is all that exists. From there, it manifests into three forms: consciousness, energy, and knowledge. Entire universe is a combination of these three basic elements: consciousness, energy, and knowledge. And everything that Janji has talked about actually just validates that. And I think it all comes together without getting caught into the web of so many interpretations, and sometimes we have to just leave the agreements and disagreements aside and just meditate on the essence of what is being said itself, and everything will be clear. That's all what I want to say, and thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir.
I think you put it very nice.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
You put it very well, sort of thing. Thank you for that.
Okay. I want to say two things.
Yeah.
Am I permitted?
Yeah, please go ahead.
just
this is
state
what-
your name so that we know who it is.
But Himanshu's question, I want to give my view. He's talking, one is Jivatma, that is individual awareness, and the other is Paramatma or cosmic awareness. And Vedanta says both are one, Ekam. So I think that was to be differentiated in Himanshu's question. Then second thing is one more question I have is, when the wave of a specific particle entered in the first place in the mind, can
Yes.
it be said?
Yes, everything works in the subtle world first, and then it is projected out as a particle. There's a fully functioning subtle universe made of waves, which is in your mind, or cosmic mind, or individual mind, whatever you want to call.
So when it is entered first, that is my question. The wave.
The wave comes first, and the wave is works in the cosmic mind. And I've written an article in the book also. It's called "Life: a Living Wave." There's a fully functioning universe made of waves, basically, and that has all the intelligence. Everything happens first there, because what you see outside is really a recorded version. Like, for example, the sun you see is an 8-minute-old version of the sun, because the sun you see is light takes 8 minutes to reach you from the sun. So you're seeing a now minus 8 minutes version of the sun. So any object we see outside is not a now version. It is a now minus the tree. Light taken from the tree maybe 10 raised to the power minus 6. And the moon, the light takes now 3 seconds. So now minus 3-second version. So you're not seeing a now version of any objects outside. It's all recorded objects there. So light is taking a finite time from the objects to reach you. So there's nothing real out there in the universe. It's all the real objects are within you. They are called the now objects and the live objects. What you're seeing outside are only recorded objects, because light takes a finite time for any object. Even your laptop in front of you, light takes about 10 raised to the minus 9 seconds. Although very small, but they're still not a now object. It's a now minus 10 raised to the minus 9 seconds version of the object there. So there's a fully functioning universe in the mind, and that universe science is obviously not trying to investigate, and hopefully they'll at least try to understand that there's a fully functioning universe in the mind.
But Vedanta of Gaudapada Acharya says there is nothing like a creation. Can it be applied here like that? Waves are already there. There is nothing like a creation of a wave. Am I right?
No, waves come from ignorance. The waves are made of ignorance. And ignorance is the source for the waves. And that's how they superimpose on the awareness part of it. So ignorance, if we remove the ignorance part, there'll be no waves then. There'll only be awareness sort of thing. So the wave, if you ask really from what the waves are made, The waves are made of ignorance, basically. There are only two things in the world: awareness and ignorance, knowledge or no knowledge.